Welcome back, everyone. I'm Julie Flakstad, and this is the Midlife Truth Project, a special 9-part series aimed at unraveling the myriad of transitions that women face as we approach and settle into midlife. For anyone new to this series, consider it an audio journey where all the conversations build off each other. So if you missed any of our previous episodes, definitely go back and listen. Okay. Today is the final episode in this series. Think of it as an epilogue. We're calling it Stronger Together, and we'll be exploring the topic of community, connection, and the sometimes complex paradigm of women supporting women. And speaking of supportive women, we are super excited to welcome Sally Mueller and Michelle Jacobs, the co-founders of Womaness. Interestingly, Sally and Michelle met over 20 years ago, but it wasn't until they reconnected more recently about their shared menopause experiences that they actually decided to join forces and launch Womaness, a brand that's entirely dedicated to modernizing aging. Taz and I can't think of a better way to wrap up this series in a big imaginary red bow than bringing all of us together and practicing what we actually preached in this series, which is to pause, reflect, and ask ourselves what we learned. And of course, we'll also share a little bit of what's ahead. So let's do this. Let's talk truth.
The most common signs of an aging neck are the development of vertical muscle bands, sagging skin, and excess fat deposit. It is important to pamper the area often neglected, the thinning, crepey skin of your neck and sort of this whole décolleté area, using a hydrating and smoothing solution that goes on with a cooling and massaging roller applicator. Womaness is the leading women's wellness brand that is modernizing aging through clean products formulated to meet the needs of your changing skin, hair, and body. They created the Let's Neck and the Décolleté Serum, shown to help instantly tighten and smooth. It helps firm and brighten over time with less sagging and crepiness. Their medical-grade stainless steel roller applicator cools and massages the skin and is formulated with unique plant-based ingredients. Womaness is available nationwide at Ulta Beauty, Amazon, and on womaness.com. Get 20% off orders of $50 or more by heading to womaness.com/midlife and use the code midlife20 at checkout. Womaness, live fully and age well.
Hi, I'm so excited to be in conversation with you both. Sally Mueller, co-founder of Womaness, Michelle Jacobs, co-founder of Womaness. This is a really special episode for us because it is our closing conversation. It's really kind of the bonus episode. We had always positioned this as a 9-part series, and then we're now having the privilege of being able to say our I don't want to call it a goodbye, but our adieu for now conversation. And I feel like the subject for the conversation, which we're calling Stronger Together, is the perfect truth for this conversation because not only of the both of you and what I know of you and what I know I've become intimately involved with Womaness and what Womaness stands for, which we're going to talk about, and also for Taz and I and this union that we have created spontaneously.
I know.
And I have now this great new friend. And I you don't always expect to meet somebody that you really connect with at this stage in life. So I feel really lucky that the universe has brought this series to us. Anyway, that being said, I wanted to start the conversation by saying that, again, I'm going to end where we started, that midlife is one of the biggest transitions that women face in their life, yet it is one that is most rarely talked about, definitely not celebrated. And so one of the things we've taken away from this 9-part series is that these conversations have almost acted as a playbook, a guide for women as they head into, approach and settle into midlife. It's almost the, dare I say, what to expect when you're expecting for midlife. Because as I've talked about throughout the series, I think there are a lot of surprises when we get to our late 40s and 50s, and certainly certain areas of our lives where we don't feel that we were prepared. So that all being said, I would love to hear first from you when I came to you guys with this series, I know exactly where it was. I remember one specific conversation, but I won't be too detailed. And the immediate response was yes. It wasn't a, oh, let me talk about it, or let me go check with this. It was a yes, period.
Now, we had breakfast together. I think we said yes even before.
Sounds way better. Breakfast sounds way better.
I think we said yes. You're right, immediately, and it was before the breakfast, and the breakfast was really to talk about some of the details. But I think we have so much respect for the two of you, and we knew that your whole vision of this 9-part series was so interesting to us because Womaness is all about living fully and aging well, and it's not just about menopause, right? And yes, we sell menopause products, but everything is so interconnected. And what she's going through with her family dynamics, her, her nutrition, all of these things affect her, experience at midlife. And so we loved your approach, and obviously had so much and continue to have so much trust and passion for what the two of you put together. And I think it's only the beginning.
No, I would have to agree. And thank you so much for including us and coming to us. But Sally is exactly right. I mean, we really see Womaness as a bigger community. We see it as midlife. We see it as the beginning of thinking about a long life. So all of the components that you guys brought fit so well with our brand. As Sally said, yes, we sell products. We talk a lot about the symptoms and what's going on with your body, but it's all wrapped around, this great community of women and this great conversation around this time of our life. So it's really actually like a perfect fit, I think. So thank you again for having us.
That's great. I think one of the things I've been super curious about as you've built this community, what's this time span over which you guys built community? I'm just curious.
We started about 3.5 years ago.
3.5 years ago. And it's a pretty big community now, right?
Yes.
What has been sort of the reverberation is the word that comes to mind. What has been sort of the request, the desire, sort of the frustration that you're hearing from that community of women? And they're all sort of in midlife, right? What are the ages you would say?
30, I would say 35 plus.
Right. So what are the themes that you're hearing from them?
It really matches
what we're doing.
Episodes.
Right.
I mean, we have a lot of very specific symptom-related questions. Should I be on HRT? I have vaginal dryness. I have this. What should I do? But it also goes so much bigger than that. A lot about empty nesting, a lot about what do I do at this point in my life. It's about relationships. I'm not sure. Is this menopause or I just don't like my husband anymore? I mean, hear a lot of that. Funny, just sharing funny things, laughing together. I mean, it runs the gamut. And that's, again, why I think this works so well, because it really matches a lot of the topics you cover. Probably heavier on the symptoms.
Yep.
And a lot of questions about literally physically what's going on.
So I always say the physicality is the gateway, right? I feel like that's kind of like opening the door, open the windows. But really the meat is behind that, and that's where I'm hoping, as we work to build community, right, that all communities, as they come together, understand that the physical is just one part of the story. It's not the whole story. It's just one part of the story. So it's interesting that they're coming in to you guys in a very similar way that they're coming to me, and I wonder if they're coming into the podcast that way too. We'll have to see.
Yeah.
Well, I will just echo, and because this is a closing episode, I think it will have a tone of reflection to it, which I'm happy about. I think one of the things I said in the very beginning Going Deep episode is that in silence is where we grow. And it is something that I learned from a dear friend of mine, Lindsay Hurdy, and I've always, held on to that. And I think we don't take enough time as women to actually look back And this is a moment for us to be able to look back on these 9 episodes and also then pause and say, what did we learn? And then how are we going to look forward? And what is one of the results of all this is this feeling of community. And the impetus for us starting, or me originally starting the Midlife Truth Project, was because I felt so alone and I wanted to understand how other women were feeling. I did all of those interviews and now culling together these midlife truths, wanting to amplify them so that other women don't feel so alone. And so I wonder, Sally, if you could tell us, like, based off of first of all, tell us a little bit about After Party, because I'm curious about how community manifests itself for Womaness. I think it's very unique for a brand to actually spend as much time and resource fostering meaningful conversation. So talk to us a little bit about that and again, how people communicate with you.
So we have the philosophy that we're building this community one woman at a time. Like, every single woman has a story, has their own vulnerabilities. You're absolutely right, Julie, that women do want to be together. They do want to connect. They're craving for that connection. I also think they're trying to figure out who to trust. And so trust is a big thing that we try to build in everything that we do. But I would, the After Party is a private Facebook group. We have about 9,100 members. And really, the members are just facilitating conversation amongst each other. And as Michelle said, it ranges from, I have osteoporosis. Does anyone have, feedback on any of the drugs that are available, or what should I do? To empty nesting, to all sorts of things. So that's one part of our community. We're also super proud of the fact that we have like 200,000 women subscribed to our email. And we see that being another dimension of our community. And it's really, we really have invested in a lot of educational information. Dr. Taz, you did a great job, we interviewed you. We, take those interviews and then we put that into emails and videos and all sorts of things, all around the goal of educating women.
Your website has a lot of resources in terms of really curated set of essays and informational articles and resources for women. Again, I think that that's a tribute to how much you do care about your community. So
I think it's also because we wanted the information.
Yeah.
I mean, it really came out of
your personal
me. Yeah. I said, and honestly, like, something comes up with all of us and we're like, oh, what are the side effects of taking too much estrogen? And just something that has come up recently. And then we find somebody, an expert, a doctor who can answer that question.
Right.
So that really the blog and the emails, the newsletters and the conversation is so relevant because it's coming right from us, our own questions. So I'm hoping that the information we put out there is helpful to women. It might even seem sometimes a little like spotty, like here and there, because we're literally answering the questions that we have.
You said something about trust, Sally, and I wonder, this podcast is named the Midlife Truth Project because we do want to represent truth. We do want to be a trusted resource. We do want to be an open conversation that we don't claim to be the experts or saying that this is the perspective or the answer on any of it. The goal for each of these episodes has been to provide an honest and vulnerable reflection on a certain transition, theme, shift, truth that women are going through, that we've heard repeatedly from our different communities. So when we talk about trust, there's one aspect I do want to get to, and that is, this is, maybe a multifaceted topic, but if we're craving community so much, and I believe we are, why do we always feel an undercurrent of, and we have data to back this up, that women don't support women? We want community on the one hand. We want to be vulnerable. We want to have these open conversations. We physically feel like moved when we share and feel seen in other women. Yet we're not always supportive of each other. Can we just take a hot second and talk about why that might be?
Michelle and I talk about that every day. That's a hard one for us.
Men have been working together and golfing together and doing stuff together for so many more years than women. And so, I mean, if you think about it, like there's just, maybe there's an easier language between them. There's more of a tradition. There's something. Women are sort of new to this. Women are new to having a hierarchy at work. Some women are really successful. Some women are still staying home. Some women are somewhere in between. Maybe there's conflict in that hasn't been resolved.
Yeah. And a lot of judgment. I think there's just a lot of judgment. Yeah.
Women have so many choices now, like stay home. Most men work. Most men have a career. Women go in so many different directions. And I think you're right. I think there's some judgment there.
Yeah.
That's like legacy judgment. And maybe it is that we've just are newer to this.
If you look historically, even if you go on safari in Africa, which I did, like the women are always together. You know what I mean?
They're doing the same things, right?
Right.
Living in a community.
They live in a community. They're together. The men are usually separate in some form or fashion. And they're doing those family chores, together,
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's Western. I hate to say that.
Yeah.
I think it's a
you're right.
Western paradigm. I think it's the nuclear family and the isolationist sort of mentality. And then it might also be American, because the American way is, I got this. I'm going to power through. I've been given everything. I have every resource in the world. I'm going to hustle. I'm going to make this happen. So it might also just be our country. I don't know. I'm like making this up as I go along, So anyhow, but I mean, I think those are some of the paradigms that women have to work themselves through, and we actually have to work ourselves through collectively. I don't think it can be individual, because I know we're all probably guilty of having some of that judgment or, doing some of that.
I will add to this mix, and I think agree, it's all of these things. I do believe, though, in starting the conversation and looking at the monster under the bed, as Jean Shatsky said in episode 7. Like, you sometimes have to address that this is real, right? And I think that part of the solution is led with vulnerability. I have been astounded. Look, I know in my community, people are probably judging me. Oh, she's this or she's that or whatever. And people have come to me after having read my articles or having heard me on a podcast or sharing my story about feeling lonely or everything that this midlife journey has been like for me. And they're like, wow, I never knew that you went through that. Like, God, I would never have guessed that you thought like that you didn't have any real friends. I would never have thought that you were struggling in your marriage, or you were questioning, your relationship, or whatever it may be. And so I think that part of the solution is vulnerable conversations like this, and that will help us better be able to support each other, because we will be able to see through the mask. But the other thing, I think that is also one of the root causes, I dare I say, I don't mean to generalize, I think women are more dimensional thinkers. And so whereas there might be this bro code where they're like thinking, they think on these like kind of level playing field, and it's most often very rational and not as layered. We're constantly filtering all of our thoughts through the lens of like, what about my kids, and what about my parents, and what about my relationship, and what do I need to get done? So I don't think that we have this level ability to be as supportive, because we're constantly hedging.
We have less bandwidth, is what you're saying. Yeah, we basically have less bandwidth. And so the bandwidth is a real problem. That's why sometimes we go back to, that's why it could be an American problem or a Western problem, because we live, or historically have lived, is shifting. We historically have lived in isolated families. The family's isolated, if you look at it, right? You're not necessarily living with a bunch of relatives or on the same street as your relatives. Like, we go back to India, and my mom can point out 3 streets. They've been there for probably thousands of years, but she can point out the same 3 streets, 4 streets that the entire family unit lived and settled on. So it was this great uncle, that cousin, this one, that one, that one. They probably intermarried too, but that's a different episode for a different time. But anyhow, they all kind of are in that general area. So if you have a problem and if you need childcare, you like walk down the road and knock on someone's door, we don't live like that. So I think when we say that women don't support women, I think we've been trained to do that because we've been trained to prove that this household has got it. Yeah.
We got it. It's all perfect.
We got it. Yeah, exactly.
People are not accustomed to asking for help.
Yep.
They don't want to be vulnerable.
I was just thinking about your first episode where you were talking about you, Julie, felt like you should be in this place, right? You had yourself
meant for more.
Yeah. And I think there is this, and it ties to vulnerability, but this perfectionism too, that maybe in more the Western female culture. And yeah, it's not, it's not asking, it's not being vulnerable. It's trying to be strong for your family. And we see it when we're talking to female investors. They have very high standards, way higher, I think, than even male investors. So
that's so interesting.
Wow.
Wait, just talk. Give me another beat on that.
True. I've experienced that. That's true.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer right now in this idea of growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And fixed mindset is when you have to have all your ducks in a row, and you have to be the smartest person in the room, and you have to have all the answers. And growth mindset is all about the vision, the possibilities, and what did you learn from your mistakes? And we never
It's
get
from
those
a book that we're reading.
Yeah, we never get those questions from a female investor. Very rarely, I should say. But we do from a male investor because they kind of also focus on bigger picture. And I think women are, and we were just talking about that at the retreat that I'm at about micro versus macro and how we do get kind of into the micro. We need to rise above it.
We talk about growth mindset in episode 8 with Gabby Reese.
Yes,
we talk
I
about
love
it in
that.
episode 2 with Chris Conley. Mindset, manifesting, and facing fear were really primary themes in the beginning and the end of the series. We architected this series as an audio journey where we had a beginning, middle, and end. And I really, just as a reminder to everyone, I think that is really about what this transformation into midlife is this shedding, is this ability to understand that we have to reframe midlife. We have to dive into our mindset. We have to be more open so that we can really begin to architect this next phase. And that, to your point, goes 100% is aligned with how do we move from a fixed to a growth mindset. So I could not agree more. I'm curious now, looking back, just in kind of moving into the reflection zone for you all. I'm going to start with you, Taz. When you look back at this journey, and I know we knew a lot of this going into it because we called together, what are these midlife truths? What do we want to talk about? We were very intentional about who we wanted to talk to for each truth. But there's been learning for us too along the way. What do you walk away with looking back on this?
I think I walk away, you're going to think I'm making this up, but I think I walk away with sort of that message being reinforced that community matters. I have been an isolationist. I will be the first to admit. I've been I'm going to do this. I'm going to figure this out. I've got this, that type of thing. And, when you're high energy and all that other stuff, that kind of feeds it almost to a certain extent. I'll do it, that whole thing, So I think I walk away with that. There's always an opportunity to learn more from anyone that's been put in your path. And friendships. I think that episode for me, because I think there are many areas of my life that probably need improvement, but one area that for sure needs improvement is my commitment to friendships, and I think I shocked my husband actually after we started doing the podcast, because I started scheduling dinner dates with friends, and I was always on the back end of that. I was always either receiving hey, can you come to dinner? And sometimes it was a lot of no's because I was out of town or this was happening or that was happening. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get ahead of this. So I actually opened up the calendar for October and November, and I planned like who we're going to go out to dinner with on different days on the weekend. And he was like, what happened? So, and I don't think I had an answer for him. And I'm realizing it's probably what we're doing, like, how it's important to cultivate these things and grow them and nurture them and foster them and really continue to bring people into your life that can lift you up because that is an important aspect of life.
One of the conversations I had with someone in a different series that I produced many years prior to this, she called it a cabinet of ministers.
Yeah.
She's like, you really want to make sure that as you age, you have a cabinet of ministers that you really go to, because as we age, there's big stuff that we face. We face loss. We face increased hardship. We can face disease. We face mourning, and we also face a lot of celebration and time to,
Right.
And you would adventure.
Oak trees, to use Page's example, Page's language. You want those oak trees in your life, because I remember I'd had an episode a few years back, and I had gone to a friend, and she's an oak tree because for many reasons, but she was so like clear and neutral, and she could have sided with different people, and she could have stoked negative emotion. She could have done all of that in that given moment, but instead she gave sound and pure advice, and it was like something I'll never forget about her, So I think that was probably for me the strongest. There are others we talked about.
Of course,
the finance one was, that was interesting to me. I wish I had known that before, had like wrestled with some of those things before.
I'm proud of that episode because the feedback from the listeners was that, oh, I wasn't expecting that. Like it seemed and it felt really important for us to recognize that regardless of where you fall on the financial spectrum, we as women have to insert ourselves in the financial conversation. And that was a huge takeaway for me, is that, somebody's going to get sick. Somebody's going to die. You have to feel in control of your financial situation wherever you fall on there. Sally and Michelle, was there anything I'm curious about? Yes, I could ask you if there's something that stuck out for you, but I'm also curious about what you think might have been missing. So as we begin to kind of widen the lens, as Kelly Corrigan would say, and oh my gosh, that was an incredible episode. And you were just listening to it on the way here, and you were crying.
I mean, this is sort of a big theme. I'm not going to answer your question directly yet.
Yes.
But I feel like so many of them touched on a feeling of loneliness that I think happens if you hit midlife and you are not connected and you don't nurture those friendships. I think so many different things happen, from the loss of a parent to children leaving the house, not feeling your best, things happening in your own personal relationship with your husband or your partner. And if you're in it alone, it's so lonely. And I think kind of like I heard that a lot in a lot of the episodes. This, like, whether you're talking about patients that come into your office or what some of the other people were saying, it's women feeling lonely. And maybe that's why they get prescribed anxiety medicine or depression medicine.
Absolutely.
And I think maybe if we lived in a world where we all had time to nurture our friendships and have those oak trees or whatever we want to call it, maybe we wouldn't feel so alone, and we would be more prepared even walk into a doctor's office to say like, hey, I think it's this, I think it's all right, talk to my friend. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because what I heard so much was that, and I do think this is true from our own experience, that so many women become lonely at this point in their life as things start to shift. And being prepared with friendships is so important.
I want Sally to answer, but before you do, I just want to insert one thing. In my interview in this room that I had with Kelly Corrigan, she said it much more eloquently than I did, but she said two things that rung out to answer to respond to that. One is that she felt most sorry for the people who are still on the hamster wheel. She didn't use the word hamster wheel, but she talked about this, that are just running, are racing, that literally are not coming up for air, and that they're almost doing just to do. She said it's something like it's a human doing versus a human being. Yeah, that's what she said. Watching people being a human doing versus a human being. And that is so important. And one of the messages we want people to listen to and take from this series is this is the time now to start to pause, whether it means an hour a day or a week or whatever it means, but to find time in your calendar to pause, to go inward, to daydream, to wonder, to reflect. And do the work, like we talked about last night, do the work of who am I? What's important to me? Where am I going? What type of inventory do I need to do on my friendship? All the practical things that we have talked about throughout this series, so that I can open that window and that the next chapters ahead are going to really be by design what I want them to be.
Yeah. You know what might be missing? I just thought this as you were talking. A real, like a deep dive into mindfulness. Meditation. I'm like a Dan Harris. I don't know, I listened to his podcast and I'm obsessed, but really understanding, not like just surface level, but like what does it mean?
Much deeper.
How do you do it?
We should go woo woo, y'all. We need to go woo woo. We don't know. Season 2. Sally, you go.
Everything was fantastic. I love Gabby Reese. That was such a great interview. She always just fires me up. And she's so raw. You know, how she talked about, you know, have fun, be playful.
Sharpening the blade of being naughty.
Yeah, sharpening the blade of being naughty. I thought that was just such great advice. And she lives it. You know, I mean, we've seen her in action and she is exactly what she said. So I just love the fact that she's so real. And so that episode sticks out. I love Sharon Malone, Dr. Malone. I didn't know, you know, obviously it's no surprise that she has such an incredible legacy, but she spent 20 years helping women on hormone therapy, and then the Women's Health
taken
Initiative.
away.
Yeah, it was taken away. So I just thought, even from a historian perspective, it was really very interesting to hear her story. In terms of, not much was missing. I mean, I think there's always so many other topics, but I'm wondering, and maybe it's just because I just did this morning at this summit that I'm at, but it's like now taking all of this and putting your goals down, like almost you know, how do you develop a whole goal setting? And it's like one piece of paper that we were working on this morning. It's like, you know, what's your vision for 2025? What are the roadblocks? So it's like taking, if friendships, Dr. Taz, is a goal of yours, like, you know, we talked about this morning. It's like, how do you nurture those friendships? How do you take time? And some women recommended being very operational, like you have to put it on the calendar, or, you know, you just have to commit. So that could be a great future opportunity of, like,
that sounds like a workshop.
It's like, it could be an IRL thing, like when we're all together.
Well, we are talking about that as it relates to what's next for the Midlife Truth Project, what's next for our collaboration. We are talking, and very specifically, and are super excited about season 2. Because that is definitely in the making, and we will be coming back to you about what that can look like. But also looking for opportunities to have in real life events where we can bring women together, where they can take off their mask, where they can share. We had an event last night, and Michelle, you were there, and just, you know, asking my friend after the event, what did you like most? She's like, I liked the share. And we asked, you know, what were you most surprised about or felt unprepared for? And that was interesting to have people say things out loud. Again, I'm a big believer is when you say things out loud or you write them down on a piece of paper, it takes it off your heart or off your mind and gets it out into the universe. And the other thing that we said, and I will pause it right here as a prompt for everyone listening, our end conversation was, what area in your life do you want to see more growth in? And we asked everyone to pause. So I'd encourage everyone listening right now. What is one area in your life where you would like to see growth? Is it creating more meaningful, stronger relationships? Is it, taking more charge of your health and wellness? Is it becoming more responsible, inserting yourself in the financial conversation? What area is it? So I would ask everyone here, take a moment and think about that, and then ask yourself, what is the obstacle that you see that is in the way of actually moving that forward or leaning into that? Is there an obstacle? What is it? Say it out loud to yourself. I don't know if you're walking the dog right now or you're in your car or wherever you may be. Think about it and then write it down. And then the third piece to that is, what can you do today or this week to actually overcome that obstacle? So what you just said was missing. We just
That was
small
great, Julie.
small frameworks for that. So, in the few minutes that are left, I want to first of all say thank you so incredibly much for your partnership
Thank
and
you.
being in community with us. I've very rarely had a partner in a production where I've felt as in sync, as heard, and as seen, and as really yes, there is you got this. So thank you for that. I also just want to we end every episode before we do our formal closing. What is a midlife truth for you, Sally?
Being more vulnerable, I think, and asking for help, especially, building a business like Womaness is not easy. And it's not that we don't ask for help, but I think we have to be more overt. And I'm speaking for myself, Michelle, but be more overt about I need this from you. And, I think people try to help. They do try to respond, but they need to know what you need from them. So
Thank you.
I hope we could do that. I've thought about this. I think it's be prepared that you're not going to be prepared. That, and it came to me as I was listening to a number of your episodes, but just sort of you're not going to go into midlife with all the answers, and these things come at you, whether it's a parent death, kids leaving for college, not feeling well, all the things. And you're strangely unprepared for it.
Yeah.
When you come from I knew when I was pregnant, I had a million people to ask. I had a doctor who gave me all these answers and whatever. In my career, I had a network. This was a whole new thing, but I think that's okay. And I just would say be prepared to be not prepared.
First of all, I love this idea of letting go. I love this idea of, again, perfect segue, Sally, in terms of stronger together. This conversation about being vulnerable, we have to ask the universe. We have to ask each other, as Sarah would say. Yeah. We have to ask for what we need, and we have to visualize it, and we have to kind of face fear, in the face, and in order to get it. So I'm gonna just, without sounding super cliche, I'm going to literally ask our listeners, ask your community, ask you, Womaness, to continue to support. We're going into a massive marketing phase for the series now that's very bingeable because it's all out there, is to really market this series, to forward it to friends. I'm going to be creating these small videos on I was surprised of how many people I know that don't know how to actually forward a podcast episode, how to follow it. Some people are technologically challenged.
Right.
Yeah, it's not their thing. So we're going to be doing some small videos on that. But tell us, everyone out there, what you are missing. What midlife truth, or let me rephrase this. What female truth is it that you are experiencing, perhaps in midlife, perhaps in another, space of your life? But what female truth do you feel that you don't always share with others? Because I can promise you, if you're feeling it, other people are feeling it.
Yeah.
Tell us, send us a DM, send us an email. My email is on my website, julieflakstad.com, and share it with us so we can put that into the mix for season 2. yeah, that's what I got. What about you?
I think that's incredible. I mean, I think this whole journey has been amazing. I think it's been a great beginning, middle, end, right? It's almost like, I know we don't have a workshop yet, but it's almost like if you follow the series, you're kind of workshopping yourself to a certain extent. And I would just invite everybody to do that. It's an opportunity. And when we talk about silence and growing in silence, I think this is a easy way to do it, right? It's an easy way to start that journey and that conversation with yourself. I think for me, and personally, in my patients and our community and everybody around us, it's about alignment. There's a lot of noise around us at any given moment. I know, you can go back to my childhood home to current, to current. It's like lots of noise, lots of commotion, and we as women have often had to step into leadership in those different scenarios, right? But there's often not an opportunity to stop and reflect and come into alignment. And only when you're in alignment can you decide what's next and can you write that next chapter. Otherwise you're just band-aiding and moving, So more to come, right? Season 1 has been amazing. So hopefully we'll have more to come, and hopefully everyone takes advantage of all the stuff that's out there.
This is evergreen content, y'all. Thank you so much for joining us today and being part of this unbelievably special series. It is hard to put into words what this series has meant to both Dr. Taz and I. It is truly the culmination of years of interviews with women, thought leaders, experts, and advocates. It's also been a real roller coaster of tears, laughter, frustration, and so much inspiration. And interestingly, I feel like there is so much left to explore in terms of more honest and vulnerable conversations that help us feel less alone and more empowered to take charge of midlife and beyond. So I meant what I said earlier. Let us know what other topics you'd like perspective on. What truth do you feel but don't always share with others? Send me a direct message via Instagram at Julie Flakstad. That's Julie Flakstad, Flakstad, or you can find my information on my website, julieflakstad.com. Your feedback will be so important as we curate season 2 of the Midlife Truth Project, which is coming soon. In the meantime, please continue to share this series with those you think who will benefit from it or enjoy it, because as we talked about today, we're all stronger together. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.